Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. This is the Water Board's public webinar on the general waste discharge requirements for winery process water. We'll call this order a few different things today, like winery order, statewide order, and permit. So it all means the same for our purposes. And we're hosting some state board information, but it's a focus today on the San Francisco Bay Regional Water Quality Control Board, or Region 2. And this is the third in our summer series for the winery order. So thank you so much for your time today and engaging on this order. We really appreciate it, and we understand everyone is very busy. Couple things on Zoom housekeeping. This is a Zoom webinar, so it's a little different than a Zoom meeting. Attendees come in on mute with their camera off, and we'll be using the Q&A function today, which is the little call out icon with the question mark. So if you click on that, there'll be a pop-up there that you can type your questions in, and feel free to submit questions to us anytime during the presentations by typing your question in there. The questions will not be displayed to the attendees today, and we're going to go through the questions in the Q&A session at the end, and we'll group questions together, read them off, and then verbally answer. The presentation is recorded today, but the live Q&A session will not be. And if you need to leave the meeting, go ahead and click on that red icon there to end the webinar. So for State Board today, our presenters are from the Waste Discharge Requirements, or WDR program at State Board, with myself, Laurel Wardrop, and I'm a senior environmental scientist over WDRs here at State Board. I'm joined by Jennifer Chen, who's a water resource control engineer in WDRs, and Rebecca Greiner, who's an environmental scientist. We also have a few presenters today from the San Francisco Bay region, and those will be introduced as part of their presentation. So a little bit about the flow of the webinar today. There'll be some information from State Board, and then it'll hand that off to the San Francisco Bay Region team, and then State Board will do a little bit of a closeout, and then we'll jump right into Q&A. So before we get started on really diving into the winery order, I wanted to talk a little bit about who the water boards are. We get confused a lot with the Department of Water Resources. Think of us as the water quality side, and DWR does a lot with supply. I wanted to give a brief overview of the State Water Resources Control Board, which is the agency headquarters in Sacramento. And then there are 9 regional water quality control boards that are semi-autonomous entities, and they have authorities over specific geographical areas as shown on the map in California. But collectively, the water board's mission is to protect the state surface and groundwaters for beneficial uses such as supply, fishing, and swimming, and there's many more. We do this through a lot of different regulatory mechanisms that are established at the federal and state level. And for example, the requirement to report your waste discharges to land and where the issuance of WDRs comes from, it comes from the California Water Code. WDRs are applied to thousands of different sites in California, with winery waste discharges to land being one of those. And there are several regional winery WDRs that are in effect still today. And those are, valid orders, and we'll talk through some of that crosswalk. But we are focusing today on the statewide winery order that was adopted in 2021. So the water boards between state and regional boards, we coordinate a lot, where State Board does a lot of the back end and statewide planning and implementation and foundational program work to make those programs go. And the regions primarily oversee and conduct permit reviews, approvals, inspections, and enforcement. And each region has a specific way of doing things to implement their region-specific basin plans and how they apply statewide requirements like the winery order. If you're not sure what regional board jurisdiction your site falls under, the Water Boards does have a map tool. It's linked on this slide that'll be live when we post these slides. But yeah, it's really good. You can put in your site address and then search by that and find your regional board. Thank you so much. I'm going to hand it now off to Jennifer Chen.
Thanks, Laurel. Hi, everyone. I'm Jennifer at the State Water Board. Let's talk a little bit at the beginning about why we're doing these webinars. So the winery order was adopted in 2021, and we're now in the implementation phase. That means we're actively accepting applications and we're enrolling wineries. Over the past few years, we've also done a lot of outreach. We've sent letters to the wineries. We made an eligibility survey. We've done presentations, and now we're doing these webinars. We actually have more outreach coming up for later this year, and you'll hear about more of that. We'll hear more about that in a little bit. We've also been answering a lot of questions. We often get the same or similar questions sent to both the state and the regional boards. We also recognize that we have a mix of winery dischargers. Some of you may be more comfortable with the waste discharge requirements or WDRs because maybe you've already gone through a few of them. Many of you might be familiar with the water board's permitting, but maybe not specifically for WDRs. And some of you may be brand new to the program, to the winery order, or even just to the water board. So the anticipated audience or the target audience for these webinars are really those folks familiar with the winery's operation and will be doing the actual implementation work, like the applications. So for example, these would be the winery owners, the operators, and for those larger wineries, maybe environmental compliance officers. This also includes the winery industry professionals, like consultants and industry groups. And so really the main focus here is, what do I need to do? When do I do it? What comes next? So for example, after I apply, what happens? And if I need more help, who do I talk to? So the purpose of these webinars really is to help get everyone on the same page. We want to try to answer these frequently asked questions, help inform and prepare the dischargers, and really help reduce confusion around the winery order. Also importantly, we want to provide resources so you have what you need, or you at least know where to find it when you do need it. One of the questions we get a lot is, don't I already have a permit? So let's talk about how the winery order fits into the water board's world. So the WDR program issues and manages permits and conditional waivers related to wastewater discharges to land to protect water quality. The WDR program is only one of many programs within the water board. These are all separate programs and each has its own water quality concerns. So for example, there's stormwater, irrigated lands, recycled water, and many more. Wineries will need separate permits from all the programs applicable to your operations. The winery order itself is one permit out of many permits within the WDR program. So keep in mind that this is not a winery program or a winery order program. It's the WDR program. The winery order was adopted by the state board, but it's implemented by the regional boards. It's a statewide general order, which means that this same permit can be used by all the regions for wineries throughout California. This is different from, say, a regional general order, which is a permit that can only be used by wineries within a certain regional board's boundaries. So you heard a little bit from more about how we all coordinate. So the state board and the regional boards, we meet regularly, we coordinate closely on the winery order, but we do also have our separate roles. So the state board provides information and tools that are applicable statewide, and we try to answer all the general questions. The regional boards, on the other hand, are a winery's direct contact. The regions will help. The regions will be the ones that can answer your site-specific questions or your region-specific questions. They're the ones that will be reviewing your permit application, and they're also overseeing the winery order compliance. So if you email the state board mailbox, you may notice that sometimes we'll answer your question first, but then we'll also suggest that you contact the regional board. This is so you can discuss any site-specific questions you have and to also begin that relationship with them. Another question we get sometimes is, where do I start? How do I get started? So first, take a look at the winery order. Try to figure out if you're eligible and if you need coverage. Take a look at the applicability section and determine your tier. It has definitions and the breakdown of how the tiers are determined in the winery order. Calculate, measure, or project the amount of winery processed water that you'll be discharging each year. And so keep in mind, when we say discharge, we mean discharge to land. So that's processed water going into a pond, being land applied for reuse, or discharged to a subsurface disposal area. I do want to point out the word project because you want to look at how much processed water you're discharging now, but also think forward to whether this amount is going to change in the short or the long term. If you're still unsure, you just want to confirm your eligibility, there is the eligibility survey on the winery order website that you can fill out. The next question is often, when do I apply? If you're an existing winery with no WDRs, apply now. If you already have individual WDRs or a conditional waiver, or you're covered by a regional general order, you can either apply now or see what the deadlines are for your specific region's enrollment priority. If you've already been notified by the regional board to either apply or transfer over from an existing permit, take a look at your notice and the deadline should be in there. If you're a brand new winery, you have to apply for coverage at least 180 days before you begin operation, because you need to apply, get your NOA, which is the notice of applicability, and that'll authorize you to discharge your winery process water. Okay, so as you get ready to apply, what are some things, some considerations you want to think about while you're planning? First, assess and gather information for your winery, your facility, your site. They all mean the same thing in terms of a permit. And think about what your current conditions are. Now think about any facility or process changes you have planned and when you plan to do them. So for example, are you planning to grow your operations? Are you planning to maybe put in something new like a pond? And what we're talking about here are material changes. A material change is something that will change the character, location, or volume of your discharge. You're required to notify the regional board before you make this type of change and to submit a new application. So now that you have your current and your future conditions in mind, compare the requirements in the winery order. How will it change for your current facility and what will be different after you make your facility improvements? So for example, maybe you're currently in tier 2, but after you expanded production, you'll be in tier 3. But maybe you project and you find out that you're actually going to still be in tier 2. You have to decide for yourself, for your facility, whether it makes sense to apply for coverage now for your current facility and submit a future application, or if it makes sense to include everything that you have planned in this one application. So for example, are you planning to increase production in 2 years or 20 years? A helpful tool to help you compare scenarios and the different winery order requirements is the compliance calendar tool on the winery order website. This is a spreadsheet where you can select your tier, your site features, and whether it's new or existing, and it'll show you which winery order requirements apply to your site and their deadline. Okay, so now that you're ready to apply, what are the actual steps? The winery order has an application section with all the enrollment details. The application itself has 3 parts: the notice of intent, the technical report, and the filing fee, which is equal to the annual permitting fee. Existing wineries also have an extra part. These dischargers also need to propose a compliance schedule and include it in the technical report for the regional board to review. The proposed compliance schedule lays out any facility improvements or changes that you need to make to bring your facility into full compliance of the winery order. So for these, also take a look at the technical provisions in the order, and it'll have specific upgrades and their deadlines. So keep in mind that this compliance schedule is only for existing wineries, which are those that began operations before the winery order was adopted on January 20th, 2021. Anything new that's being installed in the facilities, new features, those are expected to be constructed in a way that's already fully compliant with the winery order. We sometimes get questions on turnaround time. When will I be enrolled? So the short answer is that it really depends, because it can be affected by factors specific to your site or maybe specific to your region. So one of the goals of these webinars really is to help improve turnaround time. So we want to give you the information, the resources you need to submit more complete applications to your regional board. Also keep an eye out for data requests from your regional boards and respond to those promptly. It's really common for the regions to ask for missing information or more detailed information that is needed for you to complete your application. If you do these things, it will really help the regional board review your application quickly, determine if it's complete, and then issue you that notice of applicability to authorize your discharge. Okay, so lastly is, what if I still have questions? What if I need more help? So start with the winery order website. There's a lot of detailed information there. You'll find resources, tools, guides, and links to a lot of things. You'll also find contact information for both the state board and all the regional. You can email the state board winery mailbox with your general questions on the order. You can email the regional board, your specific regional board, with any questions related to your facility that's specific to your site, or if you just want to know more information about your specific regional board's process or procedures. You can also reach out for external support. There's other wineries in your area, winery groups, industry groups, and consultants. It's a great place to exchange information. And there's also a few instances in the order where you may need a professional certification or professional signature to comply with the requirement. The important thing here to keep in mind is really to be informed. Know your facility, get familiar with the winery order requirements that apply to your specific site, and this will really help you find the right help. Okay, so we're narrowing in on the order. We've talked about the water boards, the WDR program, and also an overview of how to get started. So let's look a little bit at the winery order itself. We're often asked, why is the winery order so long? Do I need to do all the requirements in it? So part of the reason the order is so long is because it contains a lot of flexibility. This flexibility was intentional and by request because every winery does things a little bit differently. The winery order covers multiple treatment and disposal options. It has requirement off-ramps. It has triggers. And so there's some requirements that are not active and may never become active unless something triggers it. The winery order also has a set of timeframes for planning and for bringing existing wineries into full compliance. So it's pretty rare, not impossible, but it would be very unusual where a winery where all the order requirements apply to you. That means your facility uses all the treatment disposal options. You didn't or you couldn't take any of the off-ramps, and you've somehow triggered all the additional requirements. So it's pretty rare. The winery order is structured such that the requirements fall into these overarching categories. They're usually taken sequentially and will funnel you into the appropriate requirements for your site. So the top level split is your tier. Here's your winery exempt, or in tiers 1, 2, 3, or 4. Next, what disposal methods do you use at your site? If you have a pond, then look at those requirements. If you don't have subsurface disposal, you can skip those requirements. Also, look at when your winery began operating. Is it considered existing or a new facility? Are you applying because you're expanding or constructing something? Next, are you discharging processed water, processed solids to land, or both? So look at those appropriate requirements. There's also water quality considerations. For example, there could be water quality sampling results that trigger additional monitoring or maybe additional reporting with a solid nutrient management plan. Okay, so let's look a little bit at the winery order itself. So you may have noticed that the order itself doesn't have traditional sections or chapter numbers. And that's because it's structured so that each individual requirement has a unique identifier so that it can be referred to directly. The identifier is made up of alternating numbers and letters, and each sublevel is also indented for that visual reminder. So keep in mind that these paragraphs can sometimes get really long. So you may have to either look back a couple of pages, a couple of paragraphs, to find the top level or the beginning of that requirement. So here are two examples. This first one is from findings. The call out is for the winery order, page 3, and it's finding number 12, subpart A. So it's pointing to this orange box here. And just because of the sentence structure for this requirement, it also applies to parts 1 through 4. This next example is from the discharge specification, and I just picked one with a lot of sublevels. The requirement here in that green box, the call out for this begins with page 36, and then you go into specification D, point 1, point A, point II, point C, point 1. So this is an example of a very a requirement with a lot of sublevels. But this one is actually pretty straightforward compared to some of the ones in the discharge specifications where you will have to go back and either up the page or back a few pages because those paragraphs can get kind of long. Okay, so let's talk also now about navigating the order. So I would never discourage anyone from reading the order from cover to cover, but it's pretty long and we're talking today about getting started. So a good way to start is to begin with the table of contents. It will really help you get to what you need. And once you get more familiar with the order and its context, also use the keyword search feature within the PDF file to get to directly what you need. The order has three main parts: findings, hereby ordered, and certification. Then you have the list of tables and the attachments at the end. The findings has all the background information, rationale, and more detailed descriptions of things. The hereby ordered has what to do, what not to do, and also sometimes timeframes and milestones. So when you get started, take a look at the findings section. You want to focus in on the applicability and the application section. Those are those orange arrows because those sections apply to all facilities. In applicability, you'll find the definitions for winery waste and how the tiers are determined and the cutoffs for the different tiers. In the application section, you'll find details on how to apply, what enrollment means, and it describes the notice of applicability and its pieces. If you take a look at the green arrows, those are the sections that only apply if you have certain features. So for example, if you have a pond, take a look at that section. If you don't have a pond, you can skip that section. So as you're looking at the winery order, remember to keep those overarching categories in mind and know them for your facility as you're reading the order. That's actually a big reason why there's so many sub-levels. It's because those requirements are organized by those categories. So really pay attention to the heading names and also the startup requirements, because it'll tell you whether it's for an existing or new facility, or maybe it's only applicable to tier 2 or tier 4 and so on. The hereby order section is set up the same way. There are discharge provisions that apply to everyone, those those orange arrows. For the effluent limitations, discharge specifications and provisions, look at them with those categories in mind for your site. I do want to point out that there are two discharge specification sections, one for only tier 1 and one for tiers 2, 3, and 4. I also want to point out the provision section. Inside, you'll find the technical provisions subsection, and that's where you'll see specific facility improvements or compliance requirements, and also ones that come into play only if triggered. And you'll see also compliance timeframes or deadlines as part of those requirements. So lastly, in the attachment, for starting out, you want to take a look at attachments A, B, C, and G. These are the glossary, notice of intent, technical report outline, and the monitoring and reporting attachments. Especially important for the technical report and the monitoring and reporting. Know your site, know your categories. So you want to make sure you're looking at the correct sections that apply to your site. Okay, and with that, thank you. And here's Rebecca with more information on the application enrollment.
Thank you, Jen. Good morning, everyone. So my name is Rebecca Greider, and I'm an environmental scientist at the State Board. So far we've covered navigating the winery order and its requirements, when to apply, and how to start planning for enrollment. Now I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about how to apply and where to get help if it's needed. So like Jen mentioned a little bit earlier, if you're unsure whether the winery order is applicable or not, there is a self-guided eligibility survey available on the winery order website, and it is also here linked in the lower left-hand corner. So once you've determined that the winery order is applicable, an application package must be submitted to begin the enrollment process. So Jen mentioned the three parts of an application: the notice of intent, the technical report, and the fee. So the first step in enrolling is submitting an electronic notice of intent with the technical report and other supporting documentation. Next is an application fee, paid either electronically or via check. There is a fee payment guide on our website that will ensure that your payment is processed correctly. Please take a look at that. And then, as Jen mentioned earlier, the application or filing fee is equal to the annual fee, which changes each fiscal year. And finally, a signed copy of the notice of intent must be submitted to the regional board. This is typically done when the payment is made. However, that's not a requirement. There is really useful information about who can sign in the help guide for the notice of intent. So after the application package is submitted to the regional board will begin the review and reach out as needed. They may reach out for any number of reasons, but a couple common examples are asking clarifying questions or requesting some missing information. After they finish their review, the regional board will issue a notice of applicability. That notice of applicability confirms the winery's tier under the order, a monitoring and reporting program, and, if applicable, an approved compliance schedule. But compliance with the monitoring and reporting program begins after a notice of applicability is issued by the regional board. So summarizing the enrollment process, it's the submittal of a complete application package, review by the regional board, and then the issuance of a notice of applicability. The notice of intent must be completed online via the California Integrated Water Quality System, or CWIS. Paper forms won't be accepted, so be sure to check out the help guide on how to navigate the electronic form. So shown here in the orange box is a form ID. It's automatically generated with each electronic notice of intent, and this will be an important number that is used throughout the enrollment process, especially when it comes to fee payments. So write that number down somewhere and keep that for future records. The two arrows on this slide are highlighting the questionnaire and attachments tabs. The questionnaire is where you'll include your facility data, such as ponds, pond information, subsurface disposal, etc. And the attachments tab is where the technical report must be uploaded. Other supporting documentation will be uploaded here as well. On the slide are the links to the notice of intent and the associated help guide, which will be live. They already are up on our website, but they will be live via this presentation when it is posted. So it's been mentioned a couple times, but we really want to emphasize that the technical report is a required part of the electronic notice of intent for submittal for all applications. The technical report, if it's missing, an error during the form completeness check step will appear, and then you will be unable to have the option to submit your electronic notice of intent. An outline of the technical report can be found in attachment C of the order. And if there are questions specific to your winery, please reach out to the regional board. So we do have a dedicated winery order webpage that's kept updated with news, resources, guidance documents, anything that we release in our electronic updates via email. Here on this slide is the link, as well as a QR code that you can scan with your phone. And as I kind of just touched on, we have an electronic notification email that you can sign up for on our webpage as well. So here's kind of a summary of the current resources that we have. It's highly suggested that you look at these when you have a moment, as a lot of the information can answer any questions that you have in the future. It is split up into tabs on our website. So there is the enrollment and fees tab, a resources tab, news tab, things of that sort. So here it's broken out by tab on this slide. The notice of intent help guide and the fee payment help guide will assist with a smoother enrollment and answer a lot of the questions that you could possibly have. So take a look at those. And one more important outreach, if you need help, a place to outreach if you need help. are the regional boards. There is a tab that has the winery regional board email addresses or the contact email addresses. These should be used when you have a question specific to your winery or to your regional board. And to find out which regional board you should contact, you can use the link that Laurel provided earlier, and it is also linked here in the lower left-hand corner. General inquiries can be sent to the state board using the email address that will be provided later at the end of this presentation. Taking a look at the website, there's a lot of resources, and not only resources, but there's some information on what qualifies as an exempt facility. So take a look at that tab as well. But with that, I will now hand the presentation to San Francisco Bay regional staff.
Thank you. Let's see. Okay, can you see my screen in the presentation mode? All right. Okay, I've got that set. Okay, so good morning, everyone. Thanks very much for joining us today. I'm excited to be here. My name is Maggie Monahan. I am a senior water resource control engineer at the San Francisco Bay Regional Water Board, and I manage a section that covers our wastewater discharges to land program, as well as recycled water and our industrial and construction stormwater programs. I've been with the Water Board about 8 years, and prior to the Water Board, I was in private industry for about 9 years, where I was also focused on wastewater, doing wastewater treatment designs, technical support, and environmental regulatory compliance support. Okay, so you've seen this map in the previous presentation, but showing all of the 9 regional water boards and their boundaries. I'll just add that the boundaries, you may be wondering, like, where do these boundaries come from? These boundaries are based on the watersheds. So we're circled there, the San Francisco Bay region. This is the watershed that drains towards the bay and, you know, some parts into the Pacific Ocean on the side there. But yeah, the regional boundaries are based on watersheds. And the San Francisco Bay region, we do have lots of wineries here. We're home to Napa Valley, Sonoma Valley, not to mention, you know, lots more wineries in Livermore and other parts of our region. So this table includes our estimate of the number of wineries in our region by county. And these are just estimates. Sonoma County, it's the portion of the county in our region. We think the total number in Sonoma County is higher, but some of those may be in our North Coast Regional Board. These are only estimates, so how many wineries actually need to enroll might differ depending on how winery process water is managed and the size of the winery. But if you use this total estimate, we have about 25% of wineries with some kind of permit coverage already for their winery process water discharge to land, and another 10% have submitted applications to enroll in the winery. But we've got ways to go to get everyone to submit their applications and get enrolled. Okay, so I wanted to introduce our team, who we are. We don't have a dedicated staff person just fully working on wineries. Instead, we have a team approach. So this is our team. You see me in the upper left corner there, and then going to the right, we have Zach Rokich and Sarah Acker. Zach and Sarah are primary waste discharge requirement program staff. Underneath on the second row, we have Tessa R, who's brand new, been with us about a month and a half. She's a scientific aide, just graduated from UC Berkeley, and we're really excited to have her support. And then we have Jerry Zhu and Joe Monacle. These two are actually in our industrial and construction stormwater program, but since many wineries also have industrial stormwater permit coverage, there's overlap. And so Jerry's been involved also in the winery order application processing, and both Jerry and Joe you might see in the field doing inspections. Then we have Yulia Scales, who's a staff analyst who helps us with processing in our state databases. And then on the top, going back to the top, we have Luis Zanaya Vasquez. He's also in our waste discharge requirements program, but focused on recycled water. So he'll be primarily handling wineries that do recycled water, but also just generally on the team to help process applications. You may think, there's somebody missing from this slide who you all may know. Here she is, Melissa Gunter. Melissa, many of you probably know or have interacted with her. She's been in our section for working on wineries for the past 8+ years. And she's been instrumental in helping to get the winery order adopted. Was involved for many years in stakeholder engagements and outreach. However, Melissa has accepted a new position in our planning division where she'll be focused on recycled water at the regional planning level. So she's still at the water board, but she won't be as involved in winery order or processing applications. But she'll still be available for the consult. She's on the call today to help answer questions, and we'll continue to tap her as needed. Okay, so overview of what I'll cover today. Overview of winery applicable permits, which was touched on in the first presentation, but I'll get a little more specific for San Francisco Bay region. The San Francisco Bay region application process, some application tips, and then next steps and resources. Okay, so as Jen mentioned earlier, of the many water board programs, wineries are subject to 3. You might think, well, my winery already has a water quality permit, but it might actually need more than just one water quality permit. So we have on the left, the waste discharge requirements for wastewater discharges to land, WDRs. In the center, we have stormwater. Wineries typically need in our industrial facilities. If you're manufacturing wine, then you're subject to the industrial stormwater general permit. Would also be subject to the construction stormwater permit for any winery infrastructure construction projects. And the vineyard permit in our region, this is the permit applicable to vineyard properties in the Napa River and Sonoma Creek watersheds. And this map here shows the vineyard permits permitted watersheds in blue outline boundary. The black dotted line are the regional board boundaries. This permit requires achieving performance standards for vineyard stormwater runoff and sediment discharges. But we're going to be focused in on the waste discharge requirements for wineries, specifically waste discharge requirements for winery process water discharges to land. I'm also noting here that a winery may have waste discharge requirements for domestic wastewater, but more typically, domestic wastewater is handled by septic systems or on-site wastewater treatment systems, OTS, and those are permitted by the local agency, so your county environmental health department usually. But for winery process water discharges to land, that could be for reuse or disposal, the winery order is the general WDR intended to cover most wineries. And use of the general permit is the most streamlined permitting option. So one more question that comes up a lot that I'll just answer right here at the start. What about commingled domestic wastewater and winery process water? Well, under the winery order, winery process water must be treated separately from domestic wastewater. So 2 separate treatment trains depicted in this little flow diagram on the side there, but they need to be separate treatment. Existing commingled treatment systems with subsurface disposal must be modified so that processed water is treated separately in order to enroll in the winery order. You can still apply to enroll in the winery order now. You just need to include your compliance schedule of modifying the system to separate the streams and treat them separately. Streams may be commingled after treatment for discharge to subsurface disposal areas, so long as that subsurface disposal area is appropriately sized designed, and operated to receive and treat both the processed water and domestic wastewater. So combined treatment systems are not eligible for coverage under the winery order, but that doesn't mean they're prohibited from existing. We do have some out there. It just means that you can't enroll in the winery order. You can't use that streamlined permitting option. And there are some additional regulations for domestic wastewater that are triggered if you commingle. Once you commingle domestic wastewater and processed water, it's now all considered domestic wastewater. And so you'll need a wastewater treatment plant classification and a certified wastewater operator for any surface discharge or reuse. And if you're reusing or recycling that treated wastewater, you need to meet the uniform statewide recycling criteria contained in the California Code of Regulations, Title 22. And this includes daily total coliform monitoring for recycled water uses. The photos on this slide do show a combined treatment system, treating both winery processed water and domestic wastewater with the moving bed biofilm reactor. So the biofilm attached to the media provides the enhanced treatment. Okay, so in our region, we have the facilities you can consider in one of three buckets or categories. We have a small bucket of water board permitted facilities. There are some wineries with individual waste discharge requirements that were issued by the water board a while back, decades back. But this is a pretty small bucket. There's only 15 active individual WDRs across our region. The next bucket, which is a little bit bigger, is the Napa County permitted facilities. So if your facility is in Napa County, you could be in this unique bucket as an existing winery with an operational permit that authorizes the discharge of winery processed water to land issued by Napa County Environmental Health. There are 189 existing facilities in this category. They've already been notified and been coordinating with the county, and they've been granted a 3-year extension until January 2027 before they need to transition to the winery order. We actually have another webinar next Tuesday, August 27th, that's focused more on Napa County, where Napa County staff will be here to present as well. So if you want to learn more about Napa County's program, you can tune in then. But then moving on, we have the largest bucket in our region are unpermitted facilities. Our region doesn't have a historic regional winery order like some other regions that are transitioning wineries over. So in our region, most facilities are unpermitted. And these include all existing facilities without a permit. And the deadline to enroll was last January. Also under this unpermitted bucket, so I kind of split the unpermitted facilities into 2 buckets. So on the right side there, box, there are a number of existing facilities that submitted an application for a permit to our water board in the past, prior to the winery order, maybe in the 90s or the 2000s, or maybe it was even more recently. But those wineries were never issued a permit. Maybe water board staff reviewed the application and okayed the discharge. Or maybe you got a letter that said you were good to go and required monitoring reports, and maybe you've been submitting monitoring reports to us. However, all of these wineries need to submit a new application to enroll in the winery order. The winery order is now the new permitting mechanism. And so if you don't have an actual permit, if you only submitted an application, you need to submit a new application going forward. And then of course, if you're a new facility that are trying to get a permit for the first time, you also need to enroll in the winery order. Okay, so a little bit more about the San Francisco Bay Region application process. The application process was covered in the State Board presentation, but we wanted to provide you with at least a sense of how much time the process can take, so you're not surprised by it or frustrated by it or annoyed that you get comments back on your application. So on this slide, we're showing the process there in the center. You have and then timelines underneath. So you have your application submitted, the electronic notice of intent. We typically get a staff person assigned from that slide where I showed our team. We're all, have lots of other cases that we're managing and workloads we're managing, and wineries is a portion. But we get a staff assigned within 1 to 2 weeks. We have a shared inbox, and we have someone assigned to be, manning that, checking that inbox each week. And that staff person helps to triage the case assignment. And the case is assigned based on staff availability, and we don't have like a single staff person covering a specific geographic region right now. We're just kind of, each case comes in, we're assigning it to a staff person. That staff person will start by doing a completion check, and we're aimed to complete the initial completion check within 30 days and notify the applicant of the status. If any items are missing, inform them of what needs to happen. And then typically further processing is on hold until we get everything. And so this is shown in a dotted line that sometimes gets sent back for being incomplete. Then the staff proceeds with conducting the more detailed technical review. So looking at how the winery is complying with the permit requirements, evaluating the designs, evaluating any proposed compliance schedules. We do have a biweekly team meeting where we discuss any questions internally so that we're trying to be consistent on how we're handling various scenarios. Every winery is unique, so, but we want to try to be as consistent as possible. We pretty much almost always staff will have some clarifying questions or comments. So this is actually shown as a solid line because it's most typical that you will have some type of questions or comments, and we send those back to the applicant via email. So we just send an informal email with a list of questions, and then staff will wait for responses from the applicant before proceeding. So again, it kind of goes on hold, and I don't have the timeline shown for that because it kind of depends on when we get the responses back. Once the technical review is complete, so that might have a couple iterations, we'll do a final permit verification step where we make sure that our databases are all set up correctly, the winery's account is set up. We'll check in with the county environmental health or planning departments to check on the use permit, any other overlapping work that the county has done with the winery. We do a final confirmation that we got that fee and the signed application form. That's also checked in the completion check, but final confirmation of that, and review the status of other water board permits. We don't hold up enrollment. If you, for example, need to have industrial stormwater permit, but you don't have that yet, we don't hold up the enrollment in the winery order, but we will flag that and notify our colleagues to follow up as appropriate. And then we proceed to the notice of applicability, or NOA step. We prepare it. We have to, goes through review, staff will prepare it, I'll review it, and then it goes to, it's signed by our executive officer or delegate, so it goes to them for the final signature. We do have templates for our notice of applicability for consistency and streamlining, but we do insert site-specific information for the winery, the tier, the reuse and disposal method, etc. And we also have specific monitoring and reporting templates for our region for each tier. And those are based on what's in the winery order, but we've made some tweaks to that for our region based on how we would use the data. And so yeah, that kind of goes through the application process and gives you an idea of the timeline on what to expect. Okay, so moving to some application tips. Tier determination. So we ask that we make sure to provide the basis for your tier determination, especially in tiers 1 and 2. The winery order allows that you can calculate processed water flow instead of measuring flow, but the application needs to provide the calculation method. And so what's shown on this slide is kind of the industry standard of how much water is produced per gallon of wine. And if you have something outside of that industry standard, we would need to see some supporting documentation or some reasoning on why you'd be outside of the industry standard. But this is what we're kind of looking for in general, is 5 to 6 gallons of processed water produced per gallon of wine. You'll want to make sure to link your annual fee payment to the application. So as noted in the prior presentation, noting down that form ID when you're doing your application and putting that on your payment method so that our fees department can link where this check came from, or electronic payment where it should be attached to. Ensure that you've got the correct name of the facility owner. The owner name should be the legal business name as registered with the California Secretary of State. So the owner name is often different than the facility name. For example, you have the owner legal name is Two Winery Brothers LLC, where the facility name is Best Winery. So make sure that you have the legal business name on the application. Similarly, make sure that you've got the correct application signature. It needs to be the legally responsible official or authorized representative. And this might be different from the winemaker. And so, for a corporation, a principal executive officer of at least the level of senior vice president, for a partnership or individual, sole proprietorship, a general partner or the proprietor. For an LLC, either a member or manager given signing authority by the operating agreement of the LLC, or a duly authorized representative of one of the above, but you'll need to also include a signed authorized representative form. Some more tips, make sure to label all important features on the site plan so that we can see where's the crush pad, where are surface water bodies, where's the discharge area. Clearly state what industrial activities are conducted outdoors and exposed to stormwater. Indicate the locations of solids, how they're managed, where they're stored on the facility map. And then just a few common information that is missing from applications, the subsurface disposal systems design data. Even if the system is existing and has been in place for a long time, we do need some of the design data to see if it complies with winery order or how we're gonna handle compliance with the order requirements. A compliance schedule if the winery is not in full compliance when they apply. What's the proposed schedule for getting into compliance? Depth to groundwater below the pond or the subsurface disposal system. And documentation of CEQA determination, which again may have been done a long time ago, but we want to have that documentation with the application. Okay, so last part of this presentation, next steps and resources. So for enrollment next steps, we're continuing to process the applications received. We will work with existing facilities on compliance. So if you're not in full compliance right now, you don't need to get to compliance before you apply. You can apply and you're required to apply. The deadline was January 2024, so you need to apply and just lay out your compliance schedule, your compliance plan. If an existing winery, if you're like, I cannot feasibly comply with all the winery order requirements, we'll work with you. We'll consider whether there are resulting impacts to water quality and use our enforcement discretion on how to proceed. Moving forward, we'll also be following up with facilities who have not applied in phases based on size and other factors. We plan to send out the first batch of letters this year, as well as conduct some site inspections. So the letter will notify the facility of the requirement to apply for coverage and will include instructions on how to apply, and then you'll have our contact information. But I want to emphasize, you don't need to wait, you shouldn't wait for a letter from us to submit the application. If you're unpermitted for your winery processed water discharge plan, the deadline to apply was last January and you are past due, meaning you're discharging without a permit. And this is a violation of California Water Code. So it does carry some administrative civil liability. That is, there is a potential for monetary penalties. Feel free to send us an email if you're not sure about your facility's permit status or you'd like to discuss the timing on submitting your application or timing for coming into compliance or other compliance questions. Our goal is to help wineries get winery order coverage and comply and protect water resources. So our ultimate goal is protection of water resources. That's our focus. So again, we'll work with you. Just contact us and get in your application. Okay, so our contact, the shared inbox, like I said, we rotate staff who are covering this inbox. It's rb2-winery, waterboards.ca.gov. We do have a San Francisco Bay region application process guidance document that includes the step-by-step application and enrollment instructions and links to all the winery-related resources. It's not posted on our website, but we did send it out by email to all facilities on our winery email list. And if you email us and need a copy, just send us an email and we'll send that as an attachment to you by email. The websites are listed there. There's the state board website. The San Francisco Bay region, we have just a one-page high-level information. But most of the information you'll find on the state board website. And then I also have there the Napa County website. And we ask that you sign up for the winery board, for the water board winery email list if you're not already. And you'll find how to sign up for the state board email list on their website and for the San Francisco Bay email list on our website linked above. Okay, so we have a lot of wineries to enroll in our region, and that's a lot of facilities that we get to learn about and see how winery processed water is managed, and we're really excited about it. We've got a great team and excited to do, we're all into wastewater treatment, and we all like to see how wineries are handling their processed water and think of ways of how they can be more sustainable and reuse the water. And reduce potable water use, reuse processed water. So I have this picture here. I don't know what you see, if you see a glass half empty or glasses half full, but I'll say, to me, it doesn't matter. There's clearly room for more wine in those glasses. So that ends my presentation. And I think now I'll turn it back to State Board. Yeah, here we go.
Thank you so much, Region 2 and Maggie. That was great. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome. So just a little bit of a wrap on kind of statewide, the things that are coming up. So we're going to be finishing out the summer webinar series. The next one is a split between Region 2, so San Francisco Bay, the Central Valley region, and Napa County. So don't miss that one if you're in those jurisdictions. And that's Thursday, August 27th at noon. So you can eat lunch while you listen to that, drink some wine maybe. No. So then and so in the winter, we're planning on doing some outreach that's more targeted to wineries that potentially have discharges to land. We've been doing a GIS look at the wineries that didn't respond, or wine businesses that didn't respond to our 3,000 letter outreach that we did in the last year or so. So that's coming, and we'll be dovetailing and coordinating with the regional board efforts that Maggie mentioned. So that's kind of the next step statewide for outreach and education. But wineries themselves, they fit into a few different buckets. So if you're enrolling in the statewide order, you're looking to submit your actual application package, and then you're planning on how to implement those facility upgrades and the monitoring and planning all that out so you can apply for the order. Then there's some wineries that already have active WDRs within their region. I think Maggie said there might be 15 in the San Francisco Bay region. So you might be getting that letter from the region to kind of start that transition into the statewide order if it's applicable. There might be some design or specification process at your site where the statewide order isn't the right permitting mechanism. So that is very site specific in some cases. And then you'd be consulting the regional board on that. And definitely, if you are going to be enrolling in the statewide order, definitely consult with the region and kind of implement what they've asked for or what they need for that. And then the last one is, well, you're an active, you're actually already enrolled in the order, and so you're looking at compliance. So you're going through your compliance schedule issued by the regional board, and you're submitting those facility-specific plans and annual reports. And the first annual report is due April 1 of next year. So some of the wineries may actually be looking for that as maybe the first year. This is a screenshot from the order with the date corrected for the actual annual report due date. It says March 1 in the table, but it's actually April 1st. So good news, you get that extra month. And yeah, so just keep in mind those reporting deadlines if you're actually enrolled in the order. So we're going to go to Q&A now. We're going to take a quick break, about 5 minutes, to kind of get your questions organized. So this is a really good time to get that question in the Q&A if you haven't already submitted it. We have some already coming in, and we appreciate that. So just again, if you're looking to do Q&A, there's a little pop-up icon with a question mark. Click on that, type in your answer or question, hit send, and then yeah, so we'll be doing that. And then I'll have some contact information to pop up on the screen here in a little bit. But we're going to go to a 5-minute break.